Let's be realistic. I think we all know exactly what's going to happen to Arya in The Winds of Winter, the long-awaited sixth book in George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series. She's going to be killed by the Faceless Men, survive, be stitched up in an alleyway, end up killing one of them, and then walking off with no consequences, going back to Westeros, copying Wyman Manderley's Frey Pie thing, but on Walder Frey this time, and then going north, killing the Night King who exists, and everyone knows about him in the books, of course, and then just going south and not really doing anything in King's Landing other than telling Jon that Daenerys is a killer. Which, I mean, I don't know. He hopefully could have gathered it, but it's Jon in the show, so jury's out on whether or not that's actually a viable conclusion. Obviously, none of these things are going to happen to Arya in the books. Today, I'm going to be discussing what will happen to her, in addition to getting you up to speed on her recent past in the series, as she has had a pretty decent role in both A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons. So there's a good bit to go over, and we do have a sample chapter from her from The Winds of Winter, so we are going to go over that and then go past that into expectations for the Faceless Girl in The Winds of Winter. Before discussing Arya's role in the most recent books, I want to take a moment and discuss her role in the earlier books in the series. I honestly think that Arya's story in the show might be slightly superior to her story in the books, for the first three books, at least, that being A Game of Thrones, A Clash of Kings, A Storm of Swords. I think that her chapters in A Clash of Kings, especially, and a little bit in A Storm of Swords, can be kind of meandering, though they do have a few small moments of characterization that I think are very much missed in the show. I think that the forced brevity of the television format really allows them to focus on the highs of Arya's arc, and I think that unlike a lot of other characters, some of the changes they made to her arc in the show are actually great. I can think of two right off the bat, and they're both kind of influencing her arc by way of pairing her with another character. In one case, entirely originally for the show, in another case, just extending that role. The first is Tywin. In the books at Harrenhal, Arya is paired up with Roose Bolton rather than Tywin Lannister, and the scenes between her and Tywin are some of my favorites in the entire show. The other one's the Hound. The Hound is a massive part of Arya's arc in both the book and the show, but kind of less so in the book. In the book, they're only together for about 5 chapters, and 2 of those chapters deal directly with the Red Wedding. We don't really get the same kind of the two of them journeying the Riverlands as we do in season 4 of Game of Thrones. That's one of my favorite arcs of that season of the show, period. So overall, early Arya was great, and I very much see why she became a fan favorite, despite her very much going off the tracks in seasons 5, 6, 7, and 8. Who do you want to see me cover next in Winter's Coming? I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments below. I will probably finish the Stark Kids, but after that, I need a new starting point, and I'm excited to hear your opinion. While you're down there, be sure to leave a like and subscribe as well. And on the channel, I do have a playlist where I have all of my Winter's Coming videos, so some of the characters you may want to see for this series might already have videos, so be sure to check that out if you haven't seen the other videos in the series. Sorry for that. Let's get back to Arya. Arya is a rare character who has an equal presence throughout the 2 most recent books in the series. You see that George R. R. Martin split up characters by book in these last 2 books. Cersei has 10 chapters in A Feast for Crows, but 2 in A Dance with Dragons. Tyrion has none in A Feast for Crows, but 12 in A Dance with Dragons. Arya doesn't have nearly that many, but she does have an even amount across these 2 books, which is quite different. Her brother Bran only has 3 in Dance, her sister Sansa only has 3 in Feast, but she has 3 in Feast and 2 in Dance. All of these chapters serve about the same purpose, that being filling the role of Arya's 5-year gap and instilling her training arc at the House of Black and White. I will say I'm not sure how well the training arc would have worked if it were to have been implemented right after Storm, because she doesn't actually get to the House of Black and White until a chapter into Feast. So overall, I think that could have probably been set up better in Storm, and that probably would have allowed Martin to ease into the 5-year gap a little better. But given that it doesn't exist, these chapters do serve as a decent introduction to the concepts here in a way that we really never saw in the show. Her chapters in A Feast for Crows specifically deal with her just entering this cult for the first time and eventually beginning to lose herself as a part of it. Her first 2 chapters are entitled Arya, but the final one is called The Cat of the Canals, which is essentially just showing that she is trying to depersonalize herself for this cult. However, in The Cat of the Canals, she ends up killing Darren, a Night's Watch deserter, and this results in her being blinded by the members of the House of Black and White, the Faceless Men, as a punishment because only Arya Stark would have killed this member of the Night's Watch, who she was angry at for deserting on behalf of her brother Jon. It's fitting then that the next Arya chapter, which is the first in A Dance with Dragons, is entitled The Blind Girl. This serves as kind of a the cave moment for Arya. It's a low point in her arc where she's being tested by these people who want her to join this cult and want to test her kind of devotion to their ideas and their faiths, and she does eventually succeed. Her second and final chapter in A Dance with Dragons sees her deemed to be worthy by the Council of the Faceless Men. I don't know if it's a formal council, but it's a meeting of a bunch of them. She then is given her first target, and she kills him with a poison coin, seemingly fully joining the Order of the Faceless Men as she is able to change her face for doing this. We get a look into this process of what it takes to change your appearance, and we see that at least using the Faceless Men magic, not Melisandre's rubies, it involves like a ritual that cuts your face and drinking certain potions, it seems, which is quite interesting and a lot better than the show's just, oh, I have some faux leather faces with me. I put them on, I'm magically that person. Yay! Before we get into my own thoughts on Arya and what her arc might be in the Winds of Winter, we do have one sample chapter that was released many, many years ago and written even more years ago. This chapter is entitled Mercy, and I believe Martin has said it was written in like 2001. This is a pre 5 year gap chapter that I assume has been at least slightly updated to account for the fact that that gap no longer exists. This chapter involves Arya going to a hand play, the Bloody Hand play, which was adapted in HBO's Game of Thrones, though slightly differently. There's no Lady Crane here, which is a big part of Arya's arc in the show. There is still Isambaro, which is kind of similarity. It's a really cool play because it is depicting the events of the story earlier, which is kind of a really cool meta recap for the readers who maybe haven't read the books in a longer time, to have this almost Ember Island players like moment to see the SOC perspective on events in Westeros. And it is quite fun that Arya is playing Sansa in this play. It's not directly stated, but it is alluded to throughout, as she says she's essentially bound to Tyrion, and he is likely to take certain liberties in the play. So it does seem quite likely that this is the depiction of Tyrion and Sansa's marriage, which the masses don't really know what went on there. Arya's main action this chapter is killing Raff the Sweetling. Raff, or Rafford is his full name, is one of the Mountains Men who she encountered in and about Harrenhal. Specifically during the Battle of Oxcross, he killed Lomi. So I think that was merged into another character in the show, if I recall, but this is a separate character and someone who has been on her list since, I believe, book 2. So it is a very satisfying moment for her to finally get revenge on him and then dump him into an alley. However, the chapter does end with this murder, and it does seem very likely that if and when the Faceless Men find out about it, there will be some pretty distinct problems for Arya, because it is very much Arya Stark who committed that murder. Though it is worth noting that Arya remains kind of in character for most of this chapter to a degree that is really surprising. She begins by kind of faltering insofar as she has a wolf dream of Nymeria, but after that, she very much stays as Mercy for this entire time, other than a few allusions to what was said during Lami's death when she's killing Raff the Sweetling. So it is interesting to see how she's advanced so much in her training with the Faceless Men, and how much her core prayer of the list still remains, despite all of their attempts at programming her to just be a killer for them and for no reason. So now we are moving forward from any sample chapter or published material, and then going into just kind of broader speculations on what Arya's arc could be in the Winds of Winter. I do think she is likely to survive the book. She's obviously a very important character, and it's also worth noting that she's George R. R. Martin's wife's favorite, and he has stated in the past that if he were to kill Arya, he might be in some trouble. So I think Arya is safer than most characters in the Winds of Winter. First thing to mention in my speculation station is the fact that George R. R. Martin has at one point referenced being back in Westeros writing an Arya chapter where she kills someone, which is quite interesting. I think that that very much is an indication that she will come back to Westeros this book. She kind of has to. I don't imagine she has more than maybe 3 or 4 chapters worth of story left to tell at the House of Black and White. And I do think upon returning to Westeros, Lady Stoneheart is the main person I want her to interact with. Given the fact that Arya's story so far has been so driven by vengeance, I think that a confrontation with Lady Stoneheart is necessary for both of those characters to move forward. Lady Stoneheart has no idea that any of her children are still alive. Arya would be a massive revelation to her. Arya, given that she has been on this path driven entirely by revenge, will see what that motivation has done to her mother. I think that if there is anything that is going to take Arya away from this path of purely destruction, fire, and brimstone, I think it is very much going to be Catelyn Stark and Lady Stoneheart and what she has become. Okay, the theory I'm about to drop is kind of just a little wild and out there, but I need you to bear with me because I think it makes something make sense to me. I think that Arya killing the Night King and ending the threat of the others makes zero sense in the show, and I think that they very much just did it because Arya was a fan favorite character and they really liked Maisie Williams. But I think there is maybe something that they could have twisted in their heads to justify it, they being David and Dan, in the actual kind of canon of Martin's importance. That being something in his original outline. It's worth noting that between seasons 3 and 4, David and Dan went to meet with Martin and they had this like 3-day long meeting where they just went over lore and wider plans for the entire series. In that meeting, it is assumed that they saw some sort of outlines, as there are a lot of outlines that have been unearthed from the Cushing Library in Texas that very much match what is seen in Game of Thrones. However, it is worth noting in an outline that we have from George R. R. Martin, the earliest outline, in fact, of the entire series in a 3-part letter, we see that it is described that Bran, Arya, and Catelyn all go north to the Wall, and Catelyn Stark is eventually killed by the others. I do think that Catelyn and Arya's arcs are very much intertwined insofar as I think they're kind of mirrors for each other, insofar as, I mean, Arya even has chapters where she is referred to as Cat. But I think that maybe Arya killing the Night King or having some role in killing the others could stem from Arya killing her undead mother in George Martin's original plan for the series. I don't think that's been his plan since 1993, but I mean, if they're going to twist something for their own purposes, that would very much make sense. I do think that Arya ending up in the Riverlands after leaving Bravos does make the most sense. I don't think she'll go north. There's enough going on right there right now. And I think that if one of the Stark girls is going to deal with the north, it's probably going to be Sansa, given all of the kind of foreshadowing and just general direction of her story and the fact that she's already in the Vale. I think that Arya being in the Riverlands very much tracks insofar as Jaime and Brienne are dealing with Stoneheart at this point in the story. I think that all parties, or not all parties, but I think that Jaime, Brienne, and Stoneheart will all survive their interactions and eventually go their separate ways by about halfway through the book. And that is about the point where Arya would show up in the Riverlands and end up providing a pivotal role there. I did too many P's in that sentence, and I'm sorry for it. There's also a bit of a strange note. At one point in 2018, Martin was asked which viewpoint he was currently working on, and he responded by saying Smudge, which, I mean, could just be him being cryptic, but that does very much seem like another name that Arya could pick up. But on the other hand, I don't know how many other names she's going to end up picking up, as I think that her arc with the Faceless Men is A, near its close, and B, will result in her regaining her identity as Arya permanently. So maybe keep an eye out for characters named Smudge in Winds. Overall, Arya Stark is an incredibly interesting character. I think if any of the Stark kid viewpoints are going to die in the series, I think it could be Arya. I think that the main danger for her looking forward is the thought that she might not steer off of her path of vengeance in time. Martin has written time and time again about these stories about characters who are seeking revenge that end up destroying themselves in the process. See Oberyn, see many other characters in A Song of Ice and Fire. But I do think that Arya will end up steering off of it, as there are indications that she is still a person at heart. And we do know that Nymeria is also still in the Riverlands, which is another reason that she might return to that portion of the continent come the Winds of Winter. I think that she is going to have a very interesting arc, and I am very excited to read it, hopefully at some day in the near or distant future. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. And yeah, I'm coming up on 50,000 subscribers, and I'd really appreciate any help in getting there. I'll have much more Song of Ice and Fire in the near future. I've got another Winters coming, also coming probably pretty soon, insofar as I'm planning on knocking out the last of the Stark kids pretty soon. No pun intended on the Season 8 Episode 4 name. But yeah, any support on the channel is very appreciated, and I look forward to seeing you all in the near future. Thank you again for watching. Goodbye, everyone.